Square, let's go. I heard that we here in the Howard Square, let's go. I heard that we here in the Times Square, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Hello and welcome to the MKH Podcast. I'm your host, Maximilian K. Hill, and today we have a very special guest. Adam Thomas is a product coach that helps leaders create empowered teams so they can consistently deliver imaginative, impactful software. He's an adjunct professor at MICA, the Maryland Institute and College of Art, and he is the founder of Approaching One, a product management and AI strategy consulting company based out of New York City. Adam, thank you for coming on the MKH Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Maximilian. Thank you for having me.
Really excited to have you on. I have been very lucky to have see you give several talks at our friend Marion's events in Soho. That's where we met. So tell me a little bit about your experience as a public speaker and how you got involved with the InfoBip event.
Sure. So I started public speaking. I've been doing that since high school in some way, shape, or form. And that has taken a bunch of different roads to get me to where I am. But I think the tie that binds all of those things, whether it was debating or giving presentations or doing town halls in my career, the tie that binds is my goal when speaking to an audience is to leave them with some level of emotional attachment to an important subject, something that they walked in not really knowing. Well, they walk out knowing a bit better. And so that has propelled my public speaking over the last, I'd say, 15 years or so. And the event, actually, it was just a cold outreach, maybe about a year and a half ago. I'm actually not sure as to why they had sought me out, but we had a good time the first time, and it feels like I am a kind of regular contributor to those events. I always appreciate them because they give me an opportunity to try to find inroads between the stuff I work with my general clients, which tend to be mid-sized companies, product teams that are that have about 3 to 20 product managers inside of them, maybe 3 or 4 portfolios, and usually I go help product leaders figure out how to really deal with the new stresses that come with that role. But those talks allow me the opportunity to see what alignment I can find with people starting out, right? So what are the things, how can I boil things down to a simpler path for startup leaders, founders who are just getting started or have smaller staffs, right? I think the average, from my experience, and you can tell me if it's different, I think the average company there is pretty small, 1 to 5, kind of startup. Can what I'm talking about translate to folks who are just getting their foot into the space? And so it's always a fun opportunity to see where those alignments are.
Yeah, I can tell you every time you talk, I listen to the whole thing, which is pretty impressive because you're up there for I think 30 minutes, that's really good. Most people can't carry an audience for that long. And one of the things you talk about are the 7 deadly sins of strategy, right? So why don't you talk a little bit about that and the Google Drive graveyard?
Yeah, so the Google Drive graveyard is a concept that I've seen in many businesses, and what it is when you've created a strategy document or really any type of document, you save it, you put it in a place where people can quote unquote find it, and no one looks at it, right? If you pull up that Google activity screen in 3 months or 6 months, you'll see that it's empty. And if you get to that point, 3 months, 6 months, and you see that activity screen is completely empty, your doc didn't do its intended effect. It didn't change people. We write things for people to read them. What it has done, as it's found itself in the Google Drive graveyard, where documents go to be forgotten about forever.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned writing, and you and I are both graduates of the ALT MBA program, which is no longer in operation. But I had a really good experience with it. I was actually one of the members of the last cohort, and I think, I'm in the outbound sales world. So I think a lot about sales, and I think one of the sales pitches that they got me was, "This is the last cohort," And I had been thinking about doing it for years, and I said, "All right, I got to do it." Pulled the trigger, and it was affordable education. So I'd love to learn more about your experience at the Alt MBA, what you learned, and your thoughts on Seth Godin.
Sure. I got involved in the ALT MBA about 2016. And when it was pretty much a fledgling kind of new thing that they were doing. And I'd been a fan of Seth's for quite some time. So, I fell into Seth's work through the blog. I think a lot of people, a lot of folks
Yes.
that have been around him for quite some time fell into the blog. And that led me to buy a couple of books. And, books like Tribes really inspired my thinking in how you work as a creative inside of rigid structures, right? I was able to apply it at places that I had worked, for example, like a depository trust and clearing corporation, which is a really conservative, and I don't mean in a political sense, but a conservative in the sense of the way of working that exists there, right? It's the most audited company in the world. And so they have to be buttoned up. It's just a function of what they do, right? And what they do is they are the depository and clearinghouse for about 96% of America's securities. So
Yeah.
anytime you're trading something, right, you're probably interacting with them. I was able to apply some of his concepts there and get success. And so then I was like, all right, perfect. This guy's interesting. There's this thing called the Alt MBA. At the time, he was like, I don't know if this will work. This is just, you know what, $3,000, you come by, you try it. I had recently left DTCC to start a startup, and I was like, I feel a little lost. I'll jump into this, right? I was thinking about going to get an MBA, and I was just like, what are my options, right? This came into play. And then I was like, I'll go with this in the startup and we'll see what we learn. And so I went through that cohort. I was in Alt MBA 4. It was an awesome experience. I was able to learn a lot about myself, because what Alt MBA really specializes in is, or what it did specialize in, was putting you in a pressure cooker of your own ideas. Most classes or workshops will either give you something light to do, and it'll be someone else's idea, or they'll give you something light to do and it'll be your idea, or they'll give you a pressure cooker and they'll have somebody else's idea, right? An example of the last one is like maybe night school, right? Like it's a pressure cooker, but it's somebody else's ideas. Something light is something that you find on some sort of workshop. Hey, take this, $500. You're only going to get 2 homework assignments and off you go. Mm-hmm. You do 14 projects in Alt MBA, mm-hmm. and you do them in 4 weeks. And each project takes a substantial amount of time.
And energy, yeah.
Yes. You got to do this while you're working, while you're doing all the other things, while you're living your life. But here's the kicker. It's your idea, right? It's what you want to focus on. And so Alt MBA was a very good process in terms of churning out your idea and putting it through a real set of rigid tests to see if it was worth doing. Mm-hmm. And you're going to do that you did that with a pod of people, mm-hmm. three to 4 other folks that are doing the same thing. So you have inside of that your work plus a support group of people also doing what they want to do, with no excuses. It's a very powerful program. And so I got the opportunity to coach starting in Alt MBA 5. I got the opportunity to be a head coach starting in Alt MBA. I think I was a head coach for Alt MBA 49, 4950, and blessed to be a part of the program for much of its existence, including the final cohort, where I got a chance to do some coaching comments for folks like Maximilian to give them a leg up on, how do they make what they're doing better. And so Alt MBA was an awesome time and an awesome experience. And I mean, Seth. I've had the honor of spending time with Seth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, a few times, right? And Seth remains one of the smartest people I've ever met.
Yes.
And I think the thing that strikes me about him more than anything is he has this really interesting way of cutting to the chase quickly without being rude, but it's direct, right? It's very direct and it's sharp, and he's not trying to be an asshole, but he's really trying to figure out what is the point. And he's great at it, right? And I've seen him do this in many different
and it's a great skill because time is money, right? And
yes,
and it's a limited resource. But yes, his books are great. I think one of the things I liked about your last talk that you gave was you mentioned I was talking to one of the Bobs, so you gave an Office Space reference, and anyone who's ever been stuck in a bad corporate job has probably seen that movie and can relate. And I guess it was a book he wrote. I think maybe he actually wrote it during the pandemic, which is now 5 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, because it was technically a couple of years, but it was called The Song of Significance. And the general concept of the book was work isn't working, right? And you have too many companies that are still stuck in like the Industrial Revolution, where you took a project and you divvied it out, to dozens of workers, and each worker got a small, tiny piece, right? But the world is big, right? And if you relegate workers down to like such a tiny, insignificant, unmeaningful project, it's really just, sad. And I know as I've tried to transition, I transitioned out of corporate into, freelance work, and it's been a struggle. It's a completely different set of skills, skills that I have, but that were dormant. And it's taken a little while for me to kind of rebuild them. But he, I think he's a very forward thinker when it comes to the workplace, because I know that there are a lot of people who did not like that book, and I think it's people who are kind of stuck in the old way. But I've learned so much. I too thought that the Alt MBA was a pressure cooker. Like every time I engaged with it, I was like, oh, kept me on my toes. But the thing that I loved about it was real education and it was affordable education. I know, we all know the numbers, $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. You have an entire generation that's been lugging around that debt for years. And I think it's great that someone like Seth Godin, who has real business experience, created a project, an educational product that's affordable, right? Like a novel concept, right? I can't tell you how many times I've lost out on a job because I didn't have an MBA. And, a reputable MBA might set you back $100,000 to $200,000 these days.
I'd argue slightly more now, right? Like a reputable companies aren't going to really care about your MBA unless it's a top 15 school or so, maybe top 20. And those are going to set you back 250 to 350,000, not including what you have to do in a lot of these programs that aren't really put up front, like the travel, for example, right? You're gonna have to get on a plane and go somewhere, probably in a different country for a while.
Yeah.
Right? You got to support whatever you're doing You got to live. We're just talking about tuition when we talk about that 100 and 150, $200,000 number. That's just getting there.
That's just table stakes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And it doesn't work for most people, right? I mean, most people don't have $150,000 cash that they can afford to spend. And I mean, I think traditional higher education it's going to have to change, and you're going to have more and more products. ALT MBA is no longer in operation, but they had a good run. I think they were in 15 years, something like that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look.
Just a shade under 10 years.
Okay, 10 years. But yeah, it's an interesting situation with a lot of moving parts. Not sure how it's all going to be sorted out, but something's going to give. And I think eventually people are just going to stop going because they realize, it's not smart, not a smart move to saddle yourself with this massive debt when you're first starting out. So tell me a little bit about your consulting work. And, you mentioned working on your own ideas. Now, I think attempting to launch a startup is going to be a better educational experience than anything that you'll ever learn in most classes. So tell me a little bit more about what you've learned in launching your own venture.
So I've had a couple of startups, and then I have this consulting firm, and each one has been a learning experience, right? I think the one thing the tie that binds a lot of it is you have a lot of power in learning how to sell and getting your first dollar, learning how a dollar works in your world, whatever your world is an important tool because regardless of however you finance, right? A lot of folks will take a look and say, I'm going to go get venture capital. These days, where interest rates are, and who knows how they'll change, unless you come with a lot of bona fides that signals that they look for, that old story doesn't really work.
It doesn't.
Yeah. And so, and I'm going to say that 99.9% of the people that would listen to this, or in general, people that we would know or people I would work with, it's a very small group of people that fit that. We see you, we like you, we're going to give you $2 million.
Yeah.
It comes from a particular neighborhood, a particular schooling, a particular, we can go on particulars all day.
Yeah.
For the rest of us, it's critical to learn how to sell whatever you build, because through that you're going to show motion. And you might figure out that you, A, don't need venture capital, but B, if you do, you come with a lot stronger case, right? You're going to be a lot stronger than the little bit of money that they give to people who show they run businesses, right? You're going to put yourself into that pool. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I've learned running a business is when you think about products, the more you talk to your customers, the better. And as you get bigger, the problem that people run into is the conversations start to become siloed. Your salespeople have a lot of information, but that gets siloed from your engineering people, that gets siloed from your product people, that gets siloed from your customer support people. As you grow, figuring out how to bridge those conversations and to raise those insights is really worth your time and energy. The third thing that I will leave folks with is how you hire and set direction is your job. If you are a founder, that's it. Especially if you've gotten to a place where you have a staff. Setting direction, bringing in the right people. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself doing anything else, more likely than not, you are wasting your time. Mm-hmm. Because if you hired the right person, they would be doing it. If you understood the direction of your business, then you would make sure to have the right person in that position. Yeah. So and I mean, this extends out, right? Say you're a larger company. Once you start talking about organizations inside of a company, Once you start talking about the portfolio level, now you have to have these considerations. You have to start thinking like that. And when I coach product leaders, what I tend to find in them is still a want or need to keep doing the individual contributor stuff, to put their hands into things and make sure things are right. Truth be told, all that energy that you're putting into that, if you took that away and put that into how you're communicating, how you're finding bridges of data or insights, how do you bridge those insights from other groups, so building trust within those groups, and then also how you hire, how you think about headcount, how you think about putting your pieces into play, you're going to get a 10 times return out of you working on a particular release.
Yeah.
So my work is generally helping product leaders, and in some cases founders, depending on the company, figure out how to make those connections and to get out of the other work and get into the work that matters.
Yeah. You sound like Seth Godin. You definitely learned a lot, but it's true. The work that matters. I mean, there's so much. I mean, I've been in jobs where the work doesn't matter, right? You're small stakes, but yeah, that's one of the things I loved about ALT MBA was the promo for it was do work that matters. And I mean, Seth Godin, marketing genius, so of course it's going to have good marketing, but very good. So, all right, I think that's all the time we've got for today, but would love to have you on as a future guest. There's so many other topics that I want to talk to you about, specifically about hiring. I think it's a tough thing. There's so much that rides on it because the costs for hiring wrong are enormous when you consider opportunity costs, lost clients, lost revenue, all of that stuff. But I want to thank you for coming on. Do you want to say something before we go?
Yeah, it's $300,000 generally, plus or take. That number, just if people were wondering what the cost of hiring wrong is. And two, we have to talk a lot about hiring in this country because there's a lot of time wasted in people following and copycatting and not really understanding what they are doing and why they're doing it. And so this is something that I've opened up my business to in the last year, and I have found, I've been partnering with a recruiting firm, and we have found a lot of success helping people learn, or we come in and we work on it. A company called Product Hiring House. We come in, we help change. We change how you hire so that you can get better hires, and you can save time and money and energy, right? And so I love that you brought that up. I'm more than happy to talk about that more in another time.
Yeah, very, very exciting stuff. I know I've really enjoyed your talks at the InfoBip events, and I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. It's always a pleasure to connect with ALT MBA people, and really had a great time today. So if anyone wants to learn more about you, what's the best social accounts that they should go to?
Check me out on LinkedIn, IN/the Adam Thomas. You can always send me a direct email, adam.thomas@hey.com, or you can visit me on my website, theadamthomas.com.
Theadamthomas.com, the wonderful Adam Thomas. Adam, thank you for coming on the MKH podcast. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Maximilian.
I heard that we hitting that 40-second lesson.